The following audio is via a Skype call.
Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Get ready to find your free will from your roots in the stars.
And today is October 20th, 2018, and we are finishing the fifth talk of Libra. That's the archetype of Libra, which is the seventh house of the horoscope. Libra is ruled by Venus, and it involves the other, which that might be the other person, the relationship, whether they're marriage, whether they're business, and within even ourselves. Tonight's subject generally is about the shadow. Libra shadow. There's shadows with all of life. Either we align ourselves and we follow through, and the shadow is a process of the soul growth. And in this particular moment, the ruler, Venus, happens to be in the sign of Scorpio, which is the next sign. And for those people that astrology is new, there's a wide mix of our audience. There's astrologers and non. So we'll try to educate a little bit. And, of course, it's always exciting to learn about it. And there's many ways a person can do that. But it's very crucial because Libra is a relationship sign. It's that first sign that's when you look at the big circle, the ecliptic, which is has all the signs, the 12 signs. And again, those 12 signs are in axis, meaning that there's a polarity established right immediately. So Libra has the polarity of Aries itself. And Libra, getting to my point, that it is beginning all the relationships of other and all the dimensions of others. So when it comes to shadow and coming to Scorpio is also a relationship sign, but more on a very intimate level. It's not just a partnership, and we're bridging this conversation with Libra and Scorpio because by Tuesday, the sun ingresses, that's an astrology word, it transits into its cycle of for 30 degrees of Scorpio. So it's very close. And right now, Venus, which is usually attached to the sun in some close proximity, about 45 degrees, I believe, at most, but it happens to be in Scorpio. And as I was bringing up, Scorpio is that extra dimension of relationships that wants to dig deep into the core of finding truth. And where are the shadows shining the light? Not always a pretty and easy situation. It's easier to talk about it. It is an emotional sign. And Libra with Venus is a cerebral, mental sign. So it's, as usual, life is a matter of coordinating our emotions with our mental. And we have a wonderful, you might say, opportunity looking on the bright side. But the shadow, where do we fall off balance? That is the subject of tonight. And I have a wonderful host joining me tonight, a speaker from Maine, Portland, Maine, Geoff Gronlund. And Geoff started his astrology search at 17, studying old esoteric books in his hometown university library and taking notes. And there, as life progressed, ventured through a myriad of paths leading to professional astrology consultations in 2014 and became a certified evolutionary astrologer through Maurice Fernandez's course in May 2017. And Maurice Fernandez is also the president of Organization for Professional Astrology, which Geoff is a board member of and community outreach director for the Organization for Professional Astrology, or better known as OPA. I'm a member, and it's a wonderful group. And OPA is an international astrology organization with satellites in 12 countries. Geoff's a photographer as well. And in Portland, Maine, he lives with his wife and 2 children. So hi, Geoff.
Hello, Sue.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. I know we started our conversation, and it's one of these ensuing conversations. I was making notes from many newspaper articles, and I was just amazed how, because relationships, of course, is between us, ourselves, other people, and society at large. And it interested me how many captions I was finding where they were introducing ideas to consider, and it made me realize how this entire Libra archetype, where we're connecting with the other person, start with these thoughts of where is the other person at, and trying to connect ideas. Like, for instance, and then one of them is, well, there's a couple. One of them is in India, they overturned gay sex ban because it's indefensible. And I was thinking, my goodness, they used indefensible as a word, because Aries is that opposite, which is defending the rights for oneself or defending others. And the other one was, I'm trying to look at all these notes here. I've got so many of them. It's like I just grabbed the first one that really makes a lot of good sense here. About whaling. Japan wants to end commercial whaling. Now, all these subjects might be in other social groups, but the fact is that sentiment is pushing that back. And I was thinking, isn't that amazing how Brazil, Australia, the United States are saying, yeah, whaling, not a good idea yet. We don't want to do that. So it's always this. I'm bridging it into thinking that it's how we think and how others think, whether it's groups or societies or whether it's the other people. Trying to find out what's right, what's really our values.
Indeed, yeah. It's about making decisions.
Yes. That's absolutely. So many. Go ahead.
Well, those are interesting articles that you read, interesting subjects, indeed, and they tend to be, those kinds of topics are reminiscent of so many different situations in the world and different countries that are either behind or ahead, however you want to look at it, progressively speaking. But, I think, are you referring to, relating this to the Libra archetype? Are you referring to it as how they require a process of making a decision and making the right decision in order to,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm not to jump right. It's that whole dynamic between oneself and others, trying to find a conciliatory direction. And when I was looking at it is part of I know that our conversation really went towards the relationship between self and other, which is really where it has to begin. That's what I was thinking too, I guess, because in order to make these collective decisions that begin to progress into laws and how we are wars, which is the polarity of getting along is not getting along, and the values that Venus wants us, like what are the values of whaling, or all these subjects that kind of get drawn up as we just get exposed. So, yeah, I wasn't really thinking of going into all those conversations, but just bringing it up, how it really mushrooms. Just from but going back to the personal is what it is important, and I guess that's really our.
Yeah, sure.
Our focus.
Well, I know that this fifth segment on Libra that you're hosting here. Thank you, first of all, for hosting me, Sue. This is a blessing, and I'm honored to be on your show.
It's a delight.
I think it's, the subject was the Libra shadow, and when we spoke the other day, discussing about this, I think that it was, very important to talk about. Libra is often referred to as the planet of balance and harmony and peace, and the Libra people, Libra sun people, the Libra energy in general is often thought of as very peaceful and they're very harmonic. But there is more to that, which I did not listen to all your other segments on Libra, so I'm not sure what you did or did not touch upon regarding that, but I'm interested for sure to talk about some of the, the shadowier sides of that, of the Libra archetype. And especially, how it's moving into, the sun is about to move into Scorpio, Mercury's in Scorpio, Jupiter's in Scorpio, Venus is in Scorpio, retrograding back into Libra to kind of look back at some things that we forgot to talk about, figure out and stuff on our relationships. But anyway, back to you, Sue. I'm just curious where you want
I'm glad to have you recap this because, first of all, our angle or direction is really appropriate, and they don't necessarily segue from one to the other. And Libra, this is really more in depth about the shadow part. So you're great. Everything is good. And it is that issue of to find balance, as we know that Libra has the direction, or not the direction, but the goal, the motive in order to find balance. But in doing so, who are they being true to? What self are they being true to in that connection? And it's so easy to project. I think that was one of the subjects we were bringing up, of not seeing it within oneself, because going back to the idea that Libra needs to compare, it realizes by the time we reach this archetype, because we have it somewhere in our chart, some of us more prominently. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it is a matter of realizing, gee, I've created and developed my life, our personage, the best I can, but yet you realize that others have other gifts to share. Just like, for instance, sharing this conversation with you. It brings up other issues. So, but in doing so anyway, projection was we can begin to blame and project or divide the energy.
Yeah, I think that something that I've noticed with Libra energy, Libra people, the Libra transits, and et cetera, is that just Libra in general is that, we can maybe grow up with a certain lifestyle, a certain political family, a political stance in our family, a certain class. However, you grow up, white middle class, you grow up, in the slums, poor, whatever, and you want to experience the opposite. You want to see the extremes, and that process of experiencing the opposites in life is really embodied in the archetype of Libra. Libra, the symbol of Libra is the woman holding the scales, the blindfolded woman holding the scales. It's justice. It's weighing out the differences between two opposites. And so the process of experiencing the extremes of anything in life is kind of what we need to do. It's part of our processing in order to transcend them both, to understand them both, and find the middle ground, transcend them, and recognize that we need to hold on to our individuality and our identity while at the same time appreciating and evolving through relating to other people's experiences and other people's personalities. I'm sorry if you could hear that ding. I got a text.
Oh, no, I didn't hear it. No, I'm
Okay, good.
yep.
Anyway, so I think that experience of witnessing other people's lives, other people's experiences, and not being lost in wanting to experience those things by forgetting our own experience. So it's a matter of balancing those two experiences. Libra can actually represent the extremes. We go to extremes. We go extremely one way and completely negate the other side and shun it completely. You go totally right wing and screw the liberals, or you go all liberal and screw the right wing, and you just that kind of experience is very very Libran.
Well, I think that it can be, and as we had talked
it can
about,
be, yes.
Yeah, it's really a matter of getting away from the mental into the emotional of the experience. We were
Right.
mentioning astrologically just that there are the angles, and that it's a tension by the processing element represented by Cancer, and then by the Capricorn making that ethical judgment. But the mental, I find that in Libra, it's so easy to think about these things and get caught up with that. But when you're talking about integrating these extremes or wanting to be attracted to, or finding one's attracted to the opposite in order to discover it, but then realizing the adjustments. And it's not just mental, it's that emotional part. But that's the beauty of it, too. And I guess right now with Scorpio, with the emotional part of Venus that's ruling it with the emotions, we have to grapple with how we feel. What does it mean? What's the value?
I loved your word adjustment. I loved your word adjustment, Sue. That's indeed what's happening right now, especially with so much happening in Libra, in Scorpio in particular right now. But Libra, a lot of these planets had just finished going through Libra. Venus, the ruler of Libra, moved on to Scorpio, but it's on its way back into Libra. It'll get there in a few days.
I wrote down just to mention for those that are astrologers, 6 degrees at this moment, and on November 16th, which is a couple of weeks, it'll go retrograde back to 25 Libra. And then a month later, on the 17th, it'll be back at the third time at 10 degrees Scorpio. So
where it started.
Astrologers, but for the rest of us, just to realize that what we're talking about will be in the experience all through up to the holidays.
Indeed, this process of, I don't want to go on to Scorpio if you're not ready to, but I mean, it's part of it. We're definitely on this cusp here with the sun in particular of moving into Scorpio out of Libra, and all these planets, the inner planets that have made their way through Libra into Scorpio. Venus retrograding back through Scorpio and back into Libra, its ruling sign. A very deep time of rehashing our relationships and our experience with other people intimately, and just this whole extreme thing again, experiencing what is it like. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing for my partner, maybe they're not doing the right thing for me, just readjusting. I love that word, Sue. Excellent. But integrating,
and then again, I'm glad you picked up on that, because it does spur a new direction for us both. Because in adjusting, I think that's where sometimes one has to really take stock of themselves, and it's not always a mental thing. It's kind of learning, because you can go off center, you can go off balance, you can go too far in adjusting to be conciliatory. There is that need that Libra gets that reputation for wanting to be cooperative and have balance.
Right. Indeed, we talked about that.
Yeah.
doing something for someone else instead of for yourself, and doing it just to keep the balance, keep the harmony, just, instead of standing up for yourself, which is the polarity of Libra and Aries. In Aries, we stand up for ourselves and say, no, this is not how it should be. I'm going to speak my truth. And in Libra, we can neglect that just so that things stay status quo and kosher. And in doing so, we're ultimately damaging, our own evolution and our own soul growth, just to keep the peace and to be conciliatory, like you said, with our partner or, a business partner.
Perhaps what it does is it gives, on the best side of it, it may buy time so that a person can process emotionally, because the square to that, here's a little lingo astrology-wise, but of Cancer, which we talked about, needs that emotional processing. And, because Libra likes perhaps other energies. I like to put, the thought of energies. People have their own recipe of their own energies. And although everybody has Libra, some are more predominantly focused on that archetype to work out. And for those that are, one likes doing things for other people. Because it's a cooperative, something gets built out of 1 and 1 makes 3. It makes a bigger thing. But so in some ways, if one's going to be confronting someone or an issue, it can just be aborted. It can say, whoops, that's it. There's a war, that's it. There's not going to be, one may not have the tools in order to talk about it or handle it. So I suppose trying to adjust to the point where one gives up part of themselves might, if they keep thinking about it or emotionally processing it, then you can. Does this make sense?
It does make sense. It's a very good point. I think that, I think that it's very important that sometimes it's noble to, put yourself second, and, keep things on the level, if you will, so that whether it's so that you or the other person has that opportunity to process and integrate whatever it is they need to go through in order to come out on the other side with their own soul growth. So I think that you're right. I think it is a very good point that it is sometimes important, maybe often it's important to put yourself second, and put the other, the relationship itself ahead of yourself, and to keep the balance and to allow each other to go through what they need to go through. But it's every situation is different, of course. But that's a good point.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have. Good, Geoff. Except I am thinking, listening to yourself say this, I'm thinking, because to think that a person may do this, but I'm not. It has to be very careful. I'm not sure it's always so good, because there's decisions to be made, and sometimes just the decision has to be made. The universe, I was told, loves action. So, and it is a cardinal sign. It wants to have action. So to sit there and kind of debate and save time that way isn't always. The boundaries have to be determined, and that's that. Maybe, and really with Venus in Scorpio right now, we may not have much choice. We may really, choice in deliberating. We may really have to just be confronted and realize it's either going to give us power or no power. That's Scorpio, where it's life, it engenders life, or else it's used up. It's just a shell. It doesn't have any purpose anymore. So
right. Yeah, I think that when we misplace the harmony and the balance, and that is not approached correctly, and that shadow side of Libra starts to emerge, I think it's important that we look to the polarity point for what might be appropriate. And I think that, the polarity point of Libra being Aries is about standing up for ourselves and taking action. And, hopefully with some, foresight and some thought and some deliberation, at least within ourselves, of how to take action. Aries can often take action without thinking. But, it's this decision-making process that is really important in the process of the Libra archetype.
We will come back in just a moment. We're going to take a brief announcement. And for those people that are listening, which we are thrilled to have, if you have a question to either Geoff or myself, or want to make a comment, this is the number that you can call in after the announcement. And for about 15 minutes, the lines will be open. And that's 425-373-5527. I'll repeat it once more. It's 425-373-5527. And then Geoff and I will return.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Libra, ruled dually by Venus. By leaving the lower hemisphere of the self, the energy of Libra enters the arena where the completed self meets the other than self to form a relationship based on partnership. As a cardinal air sign on the descendant angle, represented by the equinox of equal light, Libra's energy learns through comparison and relationships, with the intention to integrate duality and polarities.
Celebrate your star energy blessings. Schedule a natal astrology chart consultation with Talk Cosmos host Sue Rose Minahan. You'll learn to better understand what personally fuels your soul's seed direction. Sue focuses on your questions to connect you into your unique heart's desire and your true soul path's birth essence. Just $125 for an hour-and-a-half session about your life energies and significant current transits, including a recording and a copy of your chart. Schedule by emailing info@talkcosmos.com. That's info@talkcosmos.com.
Hello, this is Sue Rose Minahan of Talk Cosmos. I want to encourage you to log on to 1150kknw.com. That's 1150kknw.com right now and fill out the 2018 KKNW Listener Survey. Your responses will help the station better tailor itself to your needs. As an added incentive, when you fill out the survey, you have a chance to win round-trip passage on the Victoria Clipper to Victoria, BC, plus a $100 gift certificate to Schwartz Brothers Restaurants. So log on to 1150kknw.com for your chance to win. Thank you for all your past listenership and for helping us improve this station. Great prizes might be yours, but you must fill out the survey. One lucky person's name will be drawn on November 6th, so log on to 1150kknw right now and fill out the survey. Complete contest rules can be found at 1150kknw.com, so log on for all the details.
Hi, this is Petra Touchert of Petra Touchert Astrology, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk 1150 AM, where we discuss the meaningfulness of our roots in the stars.
Well, greetings. It's Sue Rose Minahan and Geoff Gronlund from Portland, Maine, evolutionary astrologer, and we're talking on October 20th, 2018, about Libra and the archetype of our shadows. So Geoff and I are in the thick of it, and if anybody wants to call, it's 425-373-5527, or we will continue our conversation. So, let's see. I just realized there we go. Okay, so if somebody does call. Yes, Geoff, We were just talking, you were talking about the polarity, which is Aries, standing up for yourself, and about the want for peace. And I saw an article in the paper that relates to all of us, because it is a social energy here about us and others and trying to get our values. But General John Nicholson was 61. The article was about the fact that he's retiring from having been in Afghanistan after 17 years. And his statement was that he's saying it's time for this war in Afghanistan to end. In other words, because the veterans, the warriors that are the force that's fighting are volunteer. And so it really doesn't relate to how we in America are making choices, because it doesn't affect us so deeply. Anyway, without getting into all the politics of it, just the fact that it was a peaceful venture here and to stop a war, and which really leads us to consider, it seems like all these issues get back again and again to this need of figuring out the values which Venus represents, how we think, what do we consider to be important? What do we want to defend, for instance, or what do we...
What matters most to us?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting story that you found. I had not heard about that, but he said he's been there for 17 years, and he's asking that this war end. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because he's retiring, and it used to be, I guess, that he might go on to some other, a general might have another position, but times change, and nowadays he's at the end of his career, and so he's bringing that up. But I went through all the papers. It goes again and again. That's just one of them, but it does bring up this point that you had talked about the warrior of defending, like standing in a position, which is what the country started with, that war. And now, after 17 years, there's a lot of so many political things that we're being asked to think about. Like, another one in our paper was the state death penalty. Death, of course, relating to Scorpio, got struck down. So there's 8 men, as it turns out, that were on death row that won't be. There's...
That's great.
Yeah. But and with the Supreme Court, that brought up a whole subject of people to think about how they thought about values, and more than that, just to talk between people. Because I think with Libra, it isn't where you have the business or the marriage, like in Scorpio, that deeper part of the relationship, although with Venus and Scorpio, it's really blending. It's the cusp, like you had said, and it's all very effective. So it's like the tides going back and forth. It's hard to see it.
Yeah, there's quite an ebb and flow going on right now with this Venus retrograde, going through Venus, Scorpio and Libra. It's indeed really stirring up a lot of issues collectively, as well as in our personal lives related to sexuality and values and resources and just how we go about our relationships. That things are changing. We're being called out for things that we maybe took for granted or didn't think about for maybe our whole lives, the ways that we were conditioned, that we need to be deconditioned and reconditioned. That's a huge, that's huge right now. That's what's going on. Look at this, the Kavanaugh debate was all happening when Mercury and Venus were in Libra, and now both are in Scorpio. And so this, as you said, Libra is about the relationships that we have with others and finding balance and harmony and making the right decisions. And then as as that archetype moves into through the zodiac into Scorpio, we get deeper and deeper and deeper, and we start seeing more and more of things that were hidden within ourselves and within our partners and within the collective. And so those things, they have to be dug up. Those shadows have to be seen. They have to see the light of day. I mean, we all have shadows, and we're not going to dig them all up in our lives, but the more we dig up, the more we evolve, the more we all grow, and the better, life becomes, as hard as it is.
I really like how you brought up conditioned and taking things for granted. And it made me realize as you were talking that this process of because I'm thinking of the emotion, with Scorpio, it's emotional. It's a water sign. It's a fixed sign. It's set. Frozen water has been put. But the point is that the mental can get you just so far. And then you have to go down and embrace it, put it to work, link it in with your story of life, your feelings and the other person's feelings and truth. And it is like excavating, but I'm realizing that I guess that's where the shadow really begins to work. When you think about it, it's a shadow. Like if you're standing there, even under the moon, there's a form, and you can make it. It can tell a story. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you brought up earlier, Sue, the angular zodiac signs to the Aries Libra axis being Capricorn Cancer, all the cardinal signs, a very potent axis between the four of them, and that need to integrate and kind of digest our processing, and that processing that we're going through now, this Libra Scorpio transition, like I was saying, getting deep and digging up, excavating, as you said, great word also. That process is inevitably being charged by this, square axis to the Aries Libra axis being Cancer Capricorn. We do need to integrate all these experiences within ourselves and personally. And it's interesting you brought the moon up. Nothing's a coincidence. Yeah. So, I mean, how do we identify with ourselves? How do we identify with the collective process that we're going through with this Venus retrograde cycle? It's a very important thing to witness and to recognize within ourselves.
I guess we are really shattering those conditioned ideas, going back to that word, that condition, what we thought was, it can happen at any time, but it seems to be strong at this time in our life where the landscape is taking on a different, I don't know if that's a good analogy about landscape, but still the whole dynamics between what's accepted or not accepted, and it, as we get more involved on a more intimate basis with more people, strangers suddenly aren't strangers. They're part of the other that we either the extreme, like saying we want to get to know, or else we have to get to know. And what do they think, and what's their world? It's complicated.
It is complicated, if I may. For sure, what we're going through is this experience of relationship, this kind of collective conversation that we're all starting to have more and more and more and more about what is the relationship between male and female, and what is this patriarchy, matriarchy, this what are these paradigms? What is this? What is relationship? There's a lot of issues surrounding women and women's rights and abuse and men and power and the patriarch. And this is a very, I think this is a very pivotal kind of retrograde cycle that Venus is going through right now, that we're experiencing. I've experienced it personally a number of times in the past, with Jupiter having been in Scorpio, witnessing it outside myself and also within myself, how I grew up, what my family, how I was conditioned, and how I'm recognizing things that, just aren't right, kind of, like we're really starting to see, and I know I'm not alone. A lot of things we're starting to see, a lot of how relationships should be approached. How should we reharmonize and recondition our relationship to relationship?
Yes. And it is, I know a word, dignity, I had heard on a TED Talk some time back, and that word really strikes because, it gets to the essence of every life, regardless of its value, of a voice. And I think too the control factor, because I like the equality. I'm so strong on an equality basis, male, female, people, but yet so I try to think, what are these core thoughts? And one of them would be dignity, and one of them would be and respect for oneself, one's own boundaries, which gets into this whole Libra affair. And then I was thinking too about Venus itself, how Venus was created, because with the mythology, which I've been wanting to bring up, and other talks haven't much, but, came from Uranus, the sky god, who was creating lots of creations with Gaia, Earth, and then Time, one of the the last child, or Cronus, as called, different languages of mythology. Gaia and Time, or Cronus, came along and said, okay, we're going to stop this. Castrated, you might say, which is a strong word, but, and so I've always tried to think like, well, out of that, the fact is it wasn't the last say. There was one more gift. There was one more creation, and that was Venus. And so Venus is that out of, you might say, love and attraction, which she represents, and all the whole gamut of it, not just the easy love, but any kind of desire, from the highest to the lowest. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that is to recognize with Venus that it's up to us to make what kind of desire we want. It's not in order to. Kabbalah says that a little bit. Do you ever study Kabbalah a little bit?
Actually, I haven't very much, no.
Yeah,
so
and I'm sorry
can't
to
really
throw
go
that
there.
out at this moment.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, it fascinated me partly because what they said was that desire is our DNA, that we have desire, and the point is that what is it aligned with? So in other words, just to have a desire isn't so bad. It's just that it has a short life, maybe. So therefore, higher desires, or which I like. I like that thought. It was like away from the sin idea. It was like, okay, fine. We can.
Yeah, that's a nice thought.
On. Yeah. So what you're saying is so true. Male, female relationships, abuse, power, and it's like the whole paradigm. We've got to go like, okay, chop it off.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a process that we're all experiencing for sure. I think it's important that we hang on to the hope that I think that in a way you were almost implying that what became of this relationship between Gaia and Uranus and Kronos was Venus. Venus was birthed out of the sea, correct? Is that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it is a sense of hope. It's a sense of divine beauty that was born from such a kind of chaotic relationship. And in a way that goddess, the goddess Venus was birthed and brought, hope is what I'm trying to get to. Hang on to our hope that we can maintain our identity, our individuality, and still experience other people's experiences. I think that's kind of the key, is that we don't lose ourselves. We don't give up, like you said. Maybe sometimes it's healthy to give up, and I do think that it is important to sometimes keep the balance so that life can stay steady. But ultimately, that can lead down a path we shouldn't go. We
Absolutely.
should stay true to ourselves and our individuality to keep that balance.
Yeah, because it is natural to want to connect with another energy. Children are born out of marriages, or relationships, businesses, life. It's a production. We have all kinds of fertility or production or things that evolve out of relationships and growth of some sort. But so it's and heart. Love is part learning the depth of love, learning the depth of how to care and give respect and dignity to the other person. But maintaining oneself is valuable.
Yeah, I this is such a great topic right now, Sue, and I know it's your fifth talk on Libra, and like I said, I was not present for your previous ones. I'm sorry, but
each one is valid in itself.
Sure. But with this cusp that we're moving into Scorpio, with Venus doing its thing, showing us what I was saying before about exposing the imbalances in our relationships, exposing the things that we didn't recognize before. And that is one of those things, you always talk about retrograde, meaning retrograde anything, Mercury, Venus, all the planets.
Right.
Let's take a look back at some things. Let's look back at some things. And I love the word recognize, because it's kind of an affirmation that you're becoming aware of something instead of just, pretending like you think you see what you should be thinking about. But, to truly recognize the imbalances in your relationships with others and in your marriages and in your business relationships. And, and also, like you were saying, the values, let's recognize how we might be not doing the right thing and not making the right decisions regarding our resources and our money. Ultimately Venus also rules Taurus, which is about our own personal resources and our money. So these are the times right now to be discussing these things with each other.
And I love the fact that even though there's messiness with it's not just like an orderly, okay, this A goes to B, there's all this emotion involved, and decisions and experiences and consequences and the whole 9 yards. But the male-female energy that we each embody, there's an element of this too that you were bringing up, and that it's the more we go into where do we enact our willfulness, and where do we attract or desire or mitigate. I mean, there's lots of different words and ways to put it, but within each one of us, how we do that can redefine this whole feminine, masculine, well, one way of expressing it, which is really necessary. The world does have feminine and masculine on any terms, whether be somehow within ourselves, yin yang, however we look at it.
Sure. Recognizing that paradigm, the dynamic within ourselves and within our personal lives with a partner or however you want to look at that. Indeed, Sue, it's within all of us, of course, and how do we relate to ourselves, and how do we identify with personally with that dynamic between the masculine and feminine polarities within ourselves, within the universe. What does that mean to us? What does that look like? And how do we recognize our place in that relationship, whether it's external or internal?
I'm remembering the mythology where Venus and Aries, Mars actually, they, despite the fact of anything, they get together and they're just thrilled with it, and they birth Cupid. It goes around loving more. So I guess, if nothing else, however we want to look at it, whoever we are, whatever sexuality or however it is, but just that energy within is a very fruitful one, where it engenders, like, follow your heart, follow your love, follow your, there's a pathway going forward. Somehow it does unite us, and perhaps that's the best part of, because the teeter-totter goes back and forth. As long as you're on the teeter-totter, it's probably okay. It's like if somebody jumps off.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that seesaw is a good thing to stay on. Don't get thrown off one side of that one.
I wonder if every kid has that experience. I sure had. But, yeah.
Depends how big it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really an interesting point you brought up with their child being Cupid. I think that child resides within each of us. That playful spark of love that we are all capable of experiencing for ourselves, and you can experience the relationship between another out, externally, and find that spark of love. But when you think about the reality that we do have this masculine, feminine within each of us, that child that's birthed from that union, the archetype of Cupid being so childlike, playful, and I think also a little devious in mythology.
We could, yes, it has its fun. And
yeah,
that brings up, we have a couple of minutes here, I think you want to introduce this, but it brings up this idea of the extreme, because the extreme sometimes reminds me of the unknown. We don't know that. So rather than to be afraid of it, I think recognizing any of us that is throughout this dynamic time that we're in, especially all throughout this year, really, to integrate and to give ourselves full recognition that it maybe is changing what we're, as you said, conditioned to. I'm going to just mention who's speaking with us next week, and then I'll let you sign off too. Catherine Metcalf is
excellent.
speaking. Yes, and she has been featured on a few TV shows, actually, NBC and ABC, and in Phoenix. She writes, and she's an astrologer over in Illinois. I believe she's in Illinois. I should know that, but I've written it down. So anyway, she'll be in, and we'll be talking about Scorpio.
Excellent, Sue.
Yeah, and tonight for our guests, or not for our guests, but for our audience, Geoff Gronlund has been joining me from Portland, Maine, where he is an astrologer and does consultations, and on the Organization for Professional Astrology. So it's been wonderful. Well, we have about half a minute, so Geoff, you can end with,
all I'd like to end with, frankly, is Sue, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and It's very nice to discuss astrology. Hopefully we have some listeners out there tuning in and walking away from this with maybe a little bit of extra insight that we could help bring to them. So blessings, Rose. Thank you so much. Sue. I call you Rose because I got a friend named Rose, and I never knew your middle name was Rose. So thank you, Sue, very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You have a lot of dynamic thoughts, and so
likewise.
All right. Well then, bon voyage, and for all those out, you can re-listen to this through 1150 KKNW or Talk Cosmos. We have a list of past episodes. Thanks, and all you fantastic souls. Until again.
Thank you for listening to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and guests unveil astrology's ancient archetypes that continually build the collective experiences in our unconsciousness. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 6 p.m. to continue finding your roots in the stars.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.